I think it's a combination of working from the top down, so to speak, and the bottom up, so to speak. So the combination of communicating with the leadership at higher ed and just sort of using opportunities, say when a new initiative comes up, or when there's a redesign, there's talk about a redesign, or whatever the case might be, but using those opportunities to point out the connection of content to those goals or initiatives. And then, there's opportunity to kind of evaluate what's going on with content. For example, if the teams that are kind of in the day-to-day really making those good content decisions and seeing results from them and measuring those results, I think tracking that, communicating that, making that a part of governance, or at least making progress toward making that a part of governance, also can go a long way, because if you're doing some good stuff, of course the leadership eventually is going to want to talk about that and share it, and again, it creates some positive momentum. And then I think outside of particular higher ed institutions, things that you do at Meet Content to kind of talk about these sorts of issues and the benefits and case studies and examples of doing content well and the kinds of benefits that it brings are really good conversation starters. And so I think that whole, I guess those different aspects or different ways of bringing up the issue go a long way. And I don't think there's necessarily one particular set way of doing it, but just constantly keeping it on people's minds. And I'll share just one quick example, to your point about making that connection between higher level initiatives and decisions about content. In working with University of Georgia, a big challenge was figuring out what the differentiator is for the MBA programs. And it's partly because the leadership hasn't really identified a differentiator and hasn't really set forth the focus. And in the past it used to be a certain topic and a certain theme, and now most MBA programs kind of cover that topic and theme, so it's no longer a differentiator. And so we had to do a little bit of research and work to kind of talk through the consequences of not having clear direction and clear kind of distinct differentiator on content and ultimately on things like recruitment and the kinds of jobs that content has to support. So that was a really nice opportunity to kind of really talk through how that all connects. If you don't really have a clear goal for your program, much less the content for it, but for your program, for your institution, it's going to be really, really tough to communicate, why you're different or what's unique about you in and through your content.
Yeah, genericism is a horrible fate.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah. I think I would, just to add on to that, I agree with everything that Colleen said for kind of motivation within the institution. I think I'm also a big fan of kind of looking beyond the individual institutions, because most schools, most progressive, forward-thinking schools are very tapped into the needs in their broader community or the communities and societies that they serve. I think it was just earlier this year where President Obama said that he thinks that I think it might have been in the State of the Union, that he thinks every student should make the commitment to going to at least 2 years of advanced education. I think it was like at least technical education or community college or a university to get some sort of advanced degree so that they can make a better contribution to the society, because our economy needs it. So there you've got that motivation from an outside influence that, okay, if we're trying to come out of a recession right now, what do we need to be doing so that people can still be deploying appropriate job skills, appropriate training to kind of continue to advance different areas of our industry. Many universities, colleges, trade schools, community colleges are very tapped into that and do see, okay, we need to contribute in that way as well. So they're doing things like revamping different programs, like how Harvard and many other universities have started putting more and more of their content online with different open classroom initiatives. They're looking at different ways to deploy online education. So they're looking at repackaging their content in different ways to make it more accessible to other students. Also, different universities are looking at ways to say, okay, if we want to be considered a leader, maybe a thought leader that different national councils and industry groups reach out to maybe for our perspective on, say, the environment, it means we need to be turning out students that have those appropriate perspectives and are getting that kind of education. I'm working with another school right now that was saying, okay, we're not really getting the kinds of students that we want in our biology program. We want to have more students that have an interest in environmental science because that's where the real challenges are that we think we need to face. And the problem for them was around content. And it wasn't that their content wasn't good, to your initial question, Georgie. It wasn't that it wasn't good, because it was current and it was relevant and it was well written, for whatever that means. But it wasn't appropriate to their communication goals. It wasn't appropriate to that deep-seated need they saw to be producing more students that had education in the environmental sciences, that were appropriately trained and educated to pursue advanced degrees in those areas. So they were looking at now revamping the kind of content that they have to target high school students that are interested in learning more about and studying biology, and to make sure that the content that they're offering prospective students and current students about the course offering does really say, hey, this is what you can be doing around environmental science, because unless they're offering that kind of content, they're not getting students that are interested in it, so they're not graduating students that are appropriate for that field, and they're not able to meet those different outside goals. So I think it's about kind of tying it from that very initial level of content, tying it all the way back up to maybe some of those big national standards and goals.